Chrisean Rock, why we should be blaming fathers. We're going to be talking about the importance of fatherhood in the young woman, and we're going to be using Chrisean Rock and her story to touch on a lot of things I think are important for us to speak about, because people say all the time, like, oh, she needed a father, she needed a father. And I think that unfortunately in society today we have this look on parenthood. A lot of parents seem to look at it as, I just have to give you food, shelter and clothes, and that's parenting. And I think the goal of parenting and what God calls for us to be as parents is so much deeper than those things. Those things are just done by parents because the children can't do them for themselves, you know. So we're going to be talking about this. I already touched on, I'm not going to go into my long disclaimer to try and, like, you know, make society feel better that I'm, you know, critiquing one of the most difficult things to ever be done. I'm not saying that anybody needs to do it perfectly. I'm not saying anybody will. Of course, mistakes will be made, but we still must take accountability. Otherwise, we find ourselves in the situations like this dear young lady, Miss Chrisean Rock, which we're going to be talking about today. I already touched on the mothers. We're going to talk about the fathers. Let's get into it. And don't forget, guys, this is video 3, so you may want to go start at the first video. It's all going to be in the playlist. I'm going to make a playlist entitled like Chrisean Rock or something like that for you guys to check out all these videos. So let's talk about it. Now, her father was incarcerated, right? Her father was incarcerated for a big part of her life. And the reason why I really want to start with talking about this specifically is because I find that it really irritates me how in this society today, and especially amongst us black people, right, sometimes us black folk, we will we will continue to encourage this and engage within the stereotypes of like these types of communities where people people end up in prison. And fathers, and I've seen it happen, I've seen many fathers in prison who like really love their children, really want to be there for them, try to support them as best as they can, but the truth is, if you're not there, you're not there. And you're never going to be able to get that back. You're not going to be able to build that bond with your children over the years, especially if you go when they're younger and then end up coming out a long time after they're older. You're not going to be able to protect them, you know. So you can't really call yourself a father at that point. Let's start with that, right? Because like I even say this, you know, because sometimes, you know, guys can be very protective. Proper loving men can be very also like what can I call it, aggressive as far as like the protection, which is a good thing because we need that, because that's what we need to be protected, right? Otherwise, do you know what I'm saying? But also the other issue is, and I think about this sometimes, this is one of these predicaments. Let's talk about this, guys, because I don't have a conclusion on this, right? I don't have a conclusion on this, but I want to pose a question to you guys. If you're a man and you discover of a man that, you know, let's say sexually assaults your daughter, right? Is it actually a good idea to kill them, let's say, or go and beat the hell out of them or something? Because I understand that that's what you want to do. And as a woman, and as, you know, from all the things I've been through, I know that if you're a victim of those types of crimes, like there's literally no point going to the police a lot of the time, because they're not really going to do much, even though people always say, well, go to the police and the police will handle it. The sexual crimes are the least dealt with, the least well dealt with crimes in the police, with the police, to be honest with you. They're the best when it comes to drugs and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I wonder why, right? But when it comes to stuff like that, they're horrendous. So I want to pose the question, like, because if you're a father and you then go and, like, say, kill the person who did this to your daughter, or beat them to a pulp, and then, you know, they end up in hospital and the police find out and you go to prison, now you're in a place where you actually can't even protect them now, and you're not going to be there, and you're not going to be able to provide, you're not going to be able to protect. So what is actually going to be the best case scenario with this? Do you know what I'm saying? Because I kind of feel like you can't do that, because then you're not going to be around. Like, it's not worth it for you to have done. And I know a lot of men will be like, it'll be worth spending my whole life in prison for that, but you're not going to be present to be a father. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that's not for the best, because what's for the best is for you to be there. You know what I'm saying? And that's the other thing that I think sometimes, you know, with fathers, I think there's a tendency even outside of crime for a lot of men to really like focus on, like, oh, I need to make sure I make all this money for my family. But again, you might be better off making less money but being there, because what your children need is a father. What you need is, you need to be there to show your daughter what it's like to have a healthy version of love from a man, because as a father, you're going to establish what she sees as a healthy version of love from a man. Do you see what I'm saying? You're going to set the bar for her. And if you set that bar and if you're there for her, she's also going to then trust in your wisdom when it comes to her dating herself, because she's going to be like, well, this is my dad and he looked after me and he did this, so you know what I mean, I know what to look for now in somebody. And that's my thing. And those are also important things about fatherhood. It's not just the, you know, making sure, because I think sometimes when people say, oh, these girls, they need fathers, I think they're strictly saying it like, if I was a father, I wouldn't let my daughter go out like that. But that shouldn't be the point. The point should be, if I was a father, I would love and look after my daughter so she wouldn't even choose to go out like that. And that's the difference, guys. Like, I always say this about, this is what my relationship is like with God, right? And I always say that God is my father. I refer to him as my father all the time, right? It's because the things that I do differently now than things I've done before, or the things that I won't do or haven't done also sometimes, it's not because I was just told not to. It's because the relationship I have with God causes me to value myself so highly, because God treats me with so much love, because God calls me he says all these incredible things like how I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. He calls me his daughter, he calls me an heir, he calls all of these different things. And I'm saying I'm an heir in the kingdom of God. That's why I actually call myself, you know, queen. People probably think I'm just sitting on some kind of a high horse. Also, I am just on queen energy in this life. I realize that, listen, I am on queen energy. Not everybody's necessarily on like king, queen energy, and that's fine. We all know our own energies, but I'm for sure on queen energy in this life. I know that for a fact. But I can say that in humility because I'm an heir in the kingdom of God. Like, I'm somebody he values. You know what I mean? What is the word I'm looking for? What's that Bible verse? There's a Bible verse I'm trying to think of right now. It's annoying me so much, about something that God said about us, says about us. I can't remember, but the point is, he took his time to, the fact that I understand that he took his time to make me the way he makes me. He takes his time to provide for me, to protect for me, to make me laugh, right? To put the right people into my life, to create blessings, to gift me, to bless me. That type of love is what constitutes my understanding of love. That's what then creates how I view myself and how I behave and how I treat others, and the type of love that I look for, because that's what I've experienced from my own father, God himself. Do you see what I'm saying? And so on that level, you got to think about that as well, as in that's what you're creating. Because if you're like, oh, well, my father treated me like I was a queen my whole life, you're not gonna be finding yourself with some peasant. You're not gonna be just out here behaving in certain ways online on social media, because you're going to be like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Do you know how highly I value myself? And also when it comes to fatherhood, it also comes down to how men, you know, treat their wives as well. Because if you're a man, and this is where, like, you know, it gets complicated with marriages, okay? This is the other thing. But this is why I think, yeah, it's so evil how in this society we push having children before stable relationships. And then what ends up happening is people have all these children, but they don't even actually have a healthy relationship. And so the children don't get to see the dynamic between two healthy parents. So a woman doesn't get to see what a man who values a woman, how he behaves, right? Because those are the things that the children need to see, because children imitate. That's the thing, guys. That's what I'm trying to say. Children imitate. They imitate. So if you're a father and you might be trying to be the best father with your daughter, and a lot of people have this type of dynamic with their father where, like, they have a good relationship with their father, like they might, like, as adults they might talk to their father, but like their father's out here still with multiple baby mamas and this, that, and the other. Like, you can have a great relationship as much as you want, but you're also setting your daughter up to end up with somebody like you. Because that's my question even to somebody like Nick Cannon. I always say this, like, I would like to know from Nick Cannon, if I could ever ask him, I'm sure somebody else must have asked him this out there in the world, I'd love to ask him, like, would you be happy for all of one of your many 14 different daughters, would you be happy for them to marry a man like you? Because that's the other thing about fatherhood is, would you be happy for your daughter, like, so in Chrisean Rock's situation, would you be happy for your daughter to be married to a man like you? Do you see what I'm saying? Because that's what you're setting her up for. That's what you're showing is what's acceptable, especially with how you treat women, especially if you're having all these baby mamas, because you're essentially then just treating women like, oh, well, we're just these factories anyway, so we may as well just go and be a factory. And so then when people kind of talk down on single mothers and stuff like that, it's kind of like, well, a lot of these women, they don't see having a baby as that big of a deal, because they've seen that their mums having multiple children with different fathers, they've seen fathers having lots of children with lots of different mothers. That's what's been established. So why are we surprised when we see this type of stuff in society now? You know what I'm saying? And so that's why it is important. It's important because a father will help a woman to value herself because of how he treats her, right? It's important because you're going to establish the type of love the way she expects to be loved by a man. It's important because she's going to see how you treat other women, and she's going to see how you treat other women is. So for example, even like it could come down to the things you do on a day-to-day as a father. Like if you're the type of person to be rude to like customer service people and then waitresses and stuff, if you're that kind of person and your daughter sees that and she sees you interacting with other women like that or other people, she's also going to do the same thing. And especially you as being in control of the home, because this is the other thing, guys, you got to understand, is when women don't have good masculine fathers in their lives, especially if you're not a provider, which a lot of men aren't, if you're not there, then we end up becoming used to having to provide for ourselves. And like in the situation of Chrisean Rock, she paid for a lot of her brothers to go to college. She pays for her mum's condo. She is the provider. She doesn't have the reality where she has she's not living in the reality of her father being the provider for her. And you know what, there's a lot of fathers out there who, even when their children are adults, you know, their children would never, like, they're still far out ahead and outdoing their child. You know, obviously you want your children to outdo you, but what I mean is that they're so in position of their position as a father, is what I'm trying to say, that they always have their home together, because that's what you should create. If you don't create a home, if you're not the one keeping the home together, let's say, for example, and then your daughter, because it's also what happens to a lot of us women, right? Because we end up growing in single mother households, which means we're used to women providing and protecting and trying to do everything, which means we end up becoming like that, which means that, like for Chrisean, for example, was saying that part of the reason why she is just so desperate to make money right now is because, first of all, her mum needs surgery. Her mum's sick, so she needs to pay for some like medications and stuff. She wants to move her mum where she is so she can look after her. She needs to pay for all this stuff. She's got all this pressure onto her. She's 22 years old, for goodness sake. And for being able to provide, she shouldn't have to be thinking about that at 22. Especially if she has a father in her life. She should be thinking about how she's going to progress herself and where she's going to go, and she should be being invested in. And that's what also ends up happening, is you end up having a lot of these situations where young men and young women, the reason why they get into the stuff they get into is because they ain't got a father to look after them. They ain't got that. They're supposed to have that. Like, I think about this with some people out there who judge other people, the likes of people like Chrisean Rock, and Blueface, who come from like super stable homes. And it'll always be those people who are like 28 years old, living at their parents' house, not paying a penny towards the rent, not ever had to worry about if there was going to be electricity, if there was going to be water, if there was going to be food. And they will be the ones who grow up in those stable homes who will be judging women like Chrisean Rock. So many of these women are out here utilizing their body because they have to provide. How else are they going to live? She was homeless for a long time. So she doesn't get to live in that reality. So it's all well and good us all saying, oh, well, you don't have to do it like this. Of course she doesn't have to do it like that, but there's a lot of pressure on her back. And she's got a huge family. And that's what happens when we abdicate our roles as men and women. If you abdicate your role as a father or a mother in the home, the work, the things that needed to be done, they don't go away. It just gets shifted, and usually down then to the children. You see what I'm saying? And then when it gets to there, the children don't have the wisdom. The children don't have they didn't even choose to be here for starters, but the children don't have the wisdom. The children don't have all these things. They're just going to try and do the best that they can, the ways that they know how to do so, and take the opportunities that they can, because they're seeing you struggling. And it's actually traumatic for a child to see their parents struggling financially and all these types of stuff, because then you feel like, well, I care about my mom and dad, so I want to help. I want to be able to do anything I can to help the family. You see what I'm saying? And so that's why these things are so important. Like, it's not just about how people look online or being in an abusive relationship. All these things also add up to it as well. Because, like, for example, if you're a young woman and you grow up with a father who's like, I don't believe in abuse, and me and your mum don't do that type of stuff because I value her or something like that, right? Then your child is also going to, your daughter's going to emulate that, because now this is just what we do. And you notice that with people who come from really stable, like happy, functional homes, they literally regurgitate the things that they were clearly taught growing up. They just regurgitate it because they were given that, because it might be something like, I don't raise my voice to a woman. And they'll say it to their sons for the whole of their life. They'll say it to their daughters for the whole life. So then when they go into relationships, they're the same. They're like, I don't raise my voice to a woman. I wasn't raised that way. And I find it really interesting, and I'm going to leave it here, that in society today, yeah, when it comes down to people turning out well, we're very quick to say, oh, you must have had such a good upbringing. You must have had such a good upbringing, right? But when things aren't working out, we just blame the person. We don't talk about upbringing now. We don't talk about how raised and how people were raised, right? We don't hold people accountable. We just say, oh, they must have been trying their best. do better, man, do better. And especially for the men, I think if we had more like men in the way that God intended for them to be in society today, there'll be a lot of things that would be for the better. A lot of us ladies, a lot of younger women today would not be even messing around with a lot of the nonsense. We'd be putting ourselves on OnlyFans. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You know the way I have a relationship with God. You know why I don't do this stuff even though I can make good money? Listen, guys, towards the end of last year, it was actually funny. Somebody offered me to be their sugar baby, and they was basically saying they're prepared to pay me $3,500 a month and $1,500 every week, and to be a sugar baby. And then I thought to myself, as I always do you know how highly God values me? There is not a penny there is not an amount of money that is worth my body, because that's how much God has shown He values me as His daughter. Do you see what I'm saying? And that's what we need in society. Not judgment, not excuses, accountability, and stepping up for all of us. I already talked about mothers in the last part, guys, so check that part out. I'm gonna leave it there in this one. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that there in this one. Don't forget to check out the last part, which is actually the whole build up of where we've been going with this whole story, and I'm really going to get into what I think is going on within Chrisean right now. And yeah, so guys, check that video out if you have when it comes out. Don't forget to check out the other ones. Don't forget to subscribe. Please leave a comment, because if life's a game, then let's play to win. God bless you all, and I'll see you in my next one. Goodbye.